Welcome to the Copeland Coaching Podcast, where it's all about turning your job search into a slam dunk. Your host is Angela Copeland.
Welcome to the Copeland Coaching Podcast. I'm your host, Angela Copeland. Live on the phone with me today, I have Paula Coogan from the Quarter Life Coach in Dublin, Ireland. Paula is an expert in helping quarter lifers carve out their ideal careers. She has had a lifelong passion for identifying and helping others to realize their untapped potential and has been professionally involved in helping others transform their working lives for the last 4 years. Paula has an impressive record of achievement herself, including a postgraduate diploma in law, an honors degree in business, industrial relations, and HRM, and was a consultant in the managing of complex people problems with more than 100 Irish companies. However, Paula found that her personal passion lay within the goals of the individuals she encountered rather than the agenda of the corporations which hired her. Paula has worked with clients across Ireland, the UK, and as far away as Australia, helping them to clarify, create, and work towards fulfilling and financially rewarding careers and businesses. Paula, thank you for joining me today.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm so sorry I didn't get to meet you on your Dublin trip.
Oh, yeah.
Delighted we can catch up now.
Oh, I'm so glad. And you were just saying that you've lived in Ireland your entire life. Is that right?
I have, born and bred Dublin. I don't have the thick Dublin accent, though, luckily.
Oh, it's fantastic. Well, that's great news. And I think, as we talk today, you'll find I have a number of clients who are interested to move from the U.S. to Europe. And, I'm fascinated myself in Dublin and kind of what's going on there. So I'm really excited to be chatting.
Brilliant. No, it's great. And thanks a mil.
Yeah. Well, you've had a really impressive career yourself that's gone over a number of different organizations. I kind of mentioned some of the highlights in my introduction, but what inspired you to switch over to career coaching full time?
Honestly, it was because I got to exactly where I wanted to be with my career. As you mentioned, I'd studied HRM, industrial relations, and law, and I found the job that I was working in was as a consultant that married those elements. So I was doing exactly what I'd been working towards. And I had this picture-perfect career. I had the expense account, all of that, the suitcase, or not the suitcase, the briefcase and the suits. A really kind of good status job, and I absolutely hated it. I hated it. I used to have panic attacks and anxiety attacks and everything, and I was just miserable. I was absolutely miserable. So what was it? I think I was in that industry for maybe about 5 years, and I knew that I just couldn't do it. It just wasn't for me. And there was, I think, in Ireland at the time, around 2009, 2010, there was a big recession. And I was the junior in my office anyway. So there was a redundancy situation that came up. So I said, yes, please.
Right.
Let me go. And I hadn't a clue what I wanted to do afterwards. But I just knew that what I'd studied for the last number of years just wasn't a good fit for me. So I just had to, I just had to get to know myself.
Right.
Thing. I really had to take a step back and just, I went through, I used to kind of keep a journal. From the time I was very young, I used to always keep a journal. And I saw in one of my journals that I'd written when I was about 14 years old was, I want to be a coach.
Oh, wow.
And something clicked in my head when I read that again, like years and years later. And I used to think that you had to have grey hair to be a coach. I was going to listen to a 20-something year-old life coach, but when I looked at that, when I really thought about it, it did click, because I went and I looked at my bookshelf, and my bookcase, I should say, and all of the books that I had were all personal development. They were all like Tony Robbins, Brene Brown, Malcolm Gladwell, all of this kind of stuff. There was so many books, and the films that I watched, and even just from, what was it? I'd say from the time I was able to make a cup of tea, I would have people call into my house to sit down, and we'd have tea and a chat and help them work out and kind of be solution focused and figure out what they wanted to do. So it was there. It was just that passion was there all the time, and I just I hadn't really paid attention to it. And then when I even looked at the job where I was a consultant for the organisation, and I was going in with the company's agenda, I just loved chatting to the staff, figuring out what they wanted to do, which wasn't in my job title, unfortunately.
Right.
But I used that redundancy money to support myself and retrain. And that's what I did, and I was only, I think I was 25.
Oh, that's great.
So it was great. So, yeah, that's what inspired me to go into career coaching.
Oh, that's a great story. How long did it take you to go from the time that you took the redundancy package and you were kind of out trying to figure out what to do? How long did it take before you kind of figured it out, what it was you were supposed to be doing?
About maybe just over 2 years.
Right. That's interesting. I think that's a really good point for listeners to think about, is if they are, having a difficult time transitioning. Many people expect it to be automatic, and it does really take time. I think your story is really, it's one that I've heard before, and I kind of feel the same way myself about, it takes time to figure out what you were meant to be doing.
Yeah, absolutely. And then when you are on that kind of path, you start paying attention to what actually makes you happy. Mm-hmm. And you start seeing it there, and it's just reaffirming, go on, this is the right thing for you. And it's scary as hell, absolutely terrifying to do it. Because you have people around you saying, God, you're giving up a safe job.
Right.
What are you doing? Like in Ireland especially, coaching isn't a very established industry. Mm-hmm. Many people just have never heard of coaching. Mm-hmm. And many of my close family members, had never heard of coaching. So when I started to explain to them what I was retraining in, they thought I was going to be a driver, like a coach driver.
Oh, no.
No, that's not it. That's not it. So, it was a difficult period, but it always felt right.
That's
even though
good.
It was scary, that way.
Yeah, coaching is very new in the U.S. as well. I think a lot of people have questions about, what it is, and, it's still kind of coming together. But, I mentioned at the beginning that your business name is the Quarter Life Coach. And to you, what does that mean to be a quarter life coach, and what sort of are your typical clients like?
Well, let me see. I chose the Quarter Life Coach. This is my second coaching business.
Okay.
My first one was called the Aspirations Coach, and it was an absolute flop.
Okay.
Because I was trying to work with everybody. To just kind of put myself out there and say, I'm a life coach, I'm a career coach, and I can help you do and be and have whatever it is that you want. And what I wasn't doing was paying attention to the people that I really, really enjoyed working with the most, and the people that kind of naturally seemed to be just coming to me, and they were people that were my age. So as I said, I was 25, just 25 when I was made redundant, and 27, 26 and a half, 27 by the time I was setting up and kind of was establishing myself. And what I found was that I was getting client after client who were in their kind of early 20s, mid-20s, and they were telling a story that was so similar to mine, of kind of working towards something, getting there only to find that this isn't where I want to be. This isn't making me happy. And I used to do a little happy dance in my head when I'd hear them tell the story, because it meant that I wasn't crazy and it wasn't just me.
Right.
Experiences that. And then they got a great kick out of knowing that, gosh, that they're not alone. They could resonate with my story. And it made me curious, because this was just coming up over and over and over again. And Ireland isn't exactly a big place, and Dublin isn't a huge place, but for this story to come up over again, so I had to research. And I found that there was a term, the quarter-life crisis. I'd never heard of that before.
Right.
And I thought it was hilarious when I heard it the first time. I'd heard of the midlife crisis, but I hadn't heard of the quarter-life crisis. But it seemed to, from the research that I did, it seemed to be a new developmental stage in people's lives. Because society and our culture has changed so much over the last generation even, that nowadays, I mean, people in their 20s, we're not getting married in our early 20s. We're not moving out in our teens. We're in school and education and in college for much, much longer. And I think on average it's taking us something like 7 or 8 years longer than the previous generation to reach these kind of traditional markers of adulthood, like moving out, getting a job, finishing your education, and getting a house.
Right.
Financial independence. It's taken that bit longer, but we're kind of putting huge pressure on ourselves.
Right.
So that's why I decided to just completely rebrand and focus on this particular group. And it was fantastic. It was a turning point, because finally I was clear.
Right.
And the people who were sitting down at night time and kind of going, oh my God, I'm not happy, this isn't where I want to be, and they're sitting in front of a search engine on their laptop or Google and they're typing things in, then they actually come across my site that is specific and talking to them, and they're like, oh my God, she's read my diary. She gets me. So my typical client would actually, it sounds strange, but my typical client is like me a couple of years ago.
I mean,
so I don't know.
Are the issues that they're facing, I mean, is it mainly around finding career fulfillment, or is it, I mean, it sounds like it's around sort of a number of things, financial stability and really hitting those markers, that are looked at as being sort of part of becoming an adult. Are there typical things?
There would be confusion and anxiety. From an emotional point of view would be the main factors, where kind of have this expectation of, I'm supposed to be at this particular stage at this particular age. That rhymes. But it can be really, what I find is I'm just going to gather my thoughts here for a second. The issues that they come to coaching with, or the problems that they bring that they want to solve, can range from relationships to career. But what I find underlying all of it is a need for the individual to actually reconnect with themselves. Because what I've seen, and this is something that comes up over again, and it happened with me as well, is that there is that kind of, there's expectations, there's pressure to be a certain way, and certain careers would be more desirable than others. So you'd kind of be shepherded towards something as you grew up. So, for example, like the majority, anyone who is academic, the way our school system works, it's kind of you have an end of education exam at about 17, 18 years of age. It's called the Leaving Cert, and it's based on a point system.
Okay.
So the better you do, the more points that you get. And then certain college courses would be, so say, like accounting, law, medicine, all of those particular courses, they would be quite high points courses. So you'd have to do, it's probably very similar in the States. But what happens is that anyone who really demonstrates good academic ability in terms of they're doing well and getting good grades, they would be shepherded towards these high point careers. And anybody, like I think things like art and drama and music and writing and those other areas, they're not valued as much.
Okay, right.
Unfortunately. But I find that a lot of my clients, they would have kind of felt, you know what, I should do this because I should have the job that pays the most, and I should have this kind of status, and I should try and, like, the reason I did law was because my mother told me that I would be a fantastic lawyer and that's something I should do.
Yeah.
And I had no interest. I hated that course. I really did. But like my mother, unfortunately, she passed away when I was 18.
Oh, wow.
And I was 21 or 22 when I decided, you know what, I really should do that law course that Mom said. And I did it part-time. But I did it and I hated it. But that was the only reason I did that.
Oh, wow.
It was because I thought I really should, that way.
Right.
So I totally get it when clients are talking about that kind of pressure that they feel.
That makes total sense.
Would you see the same in the States? I don't know if it's a very Irish mammy culture or...
Well, I think it's a little different, but we certainly, depending on sort of your standing in education as you grow up, you're put into classes sometimes. You're put into a special class, say if you test very well, and you may be sort of naturally pushed towards science and math, for example, if you do test very well. And I do think there, people fall in and they get pressure, whether it's from their family or from teachers or, kind of from the system. And so I do work with a lot of clients as well who have reached a certain point in life where they realize that what they have been doing professionally is really not what they want to be doing professionally. And so it's really a matter of sort of stepping back and taking a look at their personal goals again. And I do think that they experience very much what you described in terms of, I experienced this. I've left jobs a couple of times to pursue new opportunities, or even when I went to graduate school, I quit a very stable job here and moved cross-country to Los Angeles to go to graduate school. And people said to me, "What are you doing? Like, you have a good job. Why would you quit? Why?" So I do think there's a lot of pressure there, for sure. Well, so one of the products that you have different programs that you work on, I know, with your clients, and one of them is called a quarter life clarity session. And for you, what is a quarter life clarity session, and how does it help your clients?
The clarity session is one of my favorite ones because it's we work mostly during that session. We would work on values.
Okay.
Like, what is most important to you, and what do you? It sounds strange, but what do you absolutely hate? So to kind of there'd be pre-work where I would basically just get a snapshot of where the client is right now. And we would have an understanding as to even a vague idea of where they would like to be. So what's not working and what they would like. And then we would look at, okay, what are your values? And basically what they end up with at the end of the session is a snapshot of how their brain is working today and how they're making decisions. So kind of what they're... Let me see, what would be a good example of this? So say I may have freedom as being, freedom is the most important thing to me.
Okay.
And on the other side, on the flip side, if I was asked, okay, well, what feelings do you absolutely hate feeling? What do you try and avoid at all costs? And I might say, okay, I hate feeling stupid. when you have these kind of two things side by side, you find out the hierarchy, which is more important than the other, and you have them, what you're moving kind of towards and what you want to move away from, you have them side by side.
Mm-hmm.
And it is really, really fascinating because I'm able to quite quickly look at a client and say, okay, well, look, freedom's important to you. You're saying that you want to go after this particular job, or you want to just maybe emigrate, or you want to kind of go traveling. You want that freedom. But you're saying you would do absolutely anything to avoid feeling stupid, i.e. making a mistake.
Mm-hmm.
So therefore, it helps the client see that what's stopping them,
Mm-hmm.
what's getting in the way. And like the first time I worked with a coach, they did this exercise with me, and stupid came up as something that I absolutely hated feeling. I never realized that before, but it really prevented me from putting myself out there.
Right.
Especially kind of when I was like setting up as a coach, and she just challenged me to really delve that bit deeper into, okay, well, what needs to happen for me to feel stupid and that kind of stuff. And what I found was there were so many different ways that I felt stupid, and it was things like I'd be writing this list, and it was things like, I feel stupid whenever I answer the phone, and I don't know what the answer, like I'm asked a question and I don't know what the answer is. And that came from my previous role as a consultant, where I could
Oh, that makes sense, yeah.
anyone call me and ask me any question in relation to employment law, HR, or industrial relations, and expect an answer. And the pressure that I felt, that I put myself under, I developed this kind of avoidance that I just wouldn't put myself into any situation where I'd feel stupid. So in terms of kind of my progression, I wasn't putting myself out there. I was hiding behind my laptop for a long time when I was setting up as a coach and other things. And it took me a while to see that. But for clients with that clarity session, that's what we do. And it's just within a few hours, it's kind of like within about 2 hours, you get this idea, this is where I am now, this is where I want to be. And this is what's kind of how my brain is weighing up decisions as to what I'm going to do. And one of the main things it does is, in terms of the clarity, is that it gives you, like on paper, you can actually see, this is why I do what I do.
Right.
And once you have that awareness, that's so, so powerful. Because it's kind of, this is just operating at a subconscious level or an unconscious level. And we're not aware of it, but when we see it, you kind of go, that's ridiculous. Like when I saw a side-by-side, I'm not kind of going out and networking with people because I'm afraid they're going to ask me a question that I'm not going to answer.
Right. Wow.
You know, that way, I'm afraid, I'm protecting myself from feeling something that I don't want to feel.
Right.
Like, Paula, that is ridiculous. Come on, give yourself a kick up the arse and just go. Just go and do it. But that's what the clarity session really, really is about. It's just that awareness, that understanding of what is getting in your way. And when you actually see it, you will. It does give you a kick in the ass anyway to kind of move on from it. But it's one of my favourite ones to do because it's short and sweet, really.
Oh, that's fantastic. I think that's very important. I mean, I work with my clients on very similar things to kind of help them to understand their personal values so that in the future they make sure that their new career aligns to their sort of current values. 'Cause I think those things kind of change over time. Sometimes you would work any kind of a difficult job to earn a lot of money, but other times you really want to feel valued or you want to really enjoy your career. And I think, the awareness of how those feelings change over time is very important. And I think even on things like the resume or the CV, if there's something that a client of mine has discovered that they really, really dislike doing, like in your case you mentioned law, I discourage them from highlighting it too many times on their resume, because chances are good that in the future, that thing that they really dislike, they may end up doing it again. So I think, for me, I look at the job seeker as kind of a personal brand. And, I think we each are kind of our own product that we're out there trying to sell when we're looking for a job. And so I think all of this awareness really helps you to better target and better find, the right job for you.
Mm-hmm. And the really interesting thing about all of this is that, like, when I was in that job that I really didn't like, I didn't understand why it wasn't working.
Right,
why
sure.
it wasn't a good fit. Because I was kind of like, but this, I'm like, I did well in school.
Mm-hmm.
Why isn't my life working out for me or whatever? And it was quite interesting then, because understanding values and having that awareness and learning how to do that, how to actually analyze what's going on within me, gave me so much power to even forgive myself. Right. I find that that's something a lot of my clients are kind of, in terms of trust, self-trust, because they would have this idea in their mind that they would say to themselves, I chose to do that course. Mm-hmm. I took that job. I hated it. Mm-hmm. How can I trust myself to pick something else? Do you know what I mean? I obviously don't know, and it starts into the chipping away at your confidence, your self-esteem, all of that. But when you do the values exercise and you just explain to someone, look, this isn't something that you ever sat down and decided that this is how you're going to operate. This is your life experience. This is your beliefs. This is kind of just as what's come up throughout your entire life. And when you can see that clearly and understand why that particular company wasn't a good fit, because it didn't honor those parts of you that you're saying are really important, because you didn't know. You didn't have that clarity as to what they were. But now you do.
Right.
Now you do, and now it's completely up to you. You have the power, you have the responsibility to align, exactly as you're saying, to align yourself to particular companies and particular careers that are going to be a good match for who you are as an individual.
Mm-hmm. And I think
when you teach people, yeah.
I think it's important to... Mm-hmm. Sorry.
You go on.
No, I think it's important to recognize also that, we change over time. You're not going to have necessarily the same goals at 25 that you will at 45. Personally, you will have grown and developed, and different things will be important to you.
Yeah. And one of the things is this particular, the clarity session and the exercises that we do, it's really important to me to make sure that my client understands and learns how to do that for themselves. Mm-hmm. So for that exact reason, Angela, because it will change, their values will change, what's important to them will completely change as they evolve and as they grow. So if they feel, hang on a second, things are a bit out of sync, or I don't feel very balanced or fulfilled in my career anymore, that they can just take out a pen and paper and just do a bit of self-discovery and understand and know what they need to do next. So, because they absolutely will change, and as they grow, their goals will change, everything's going to change. Luckily that we don't stay the same, because we get very bored.
Right. I totally agree. And I think it is, you make a good point there, which is that you need to learn to do it yourself. I think that's part of what coaching is about. It's more, you're teaching people how to become, self-sufficient in this way. You're not there just to do it for them. And I feel that way with my coaching as well. Is it's important that the person kind of arrive to their own conclusions through some self-discovery, as opposed to having someone sort of tell them what to do. And it sounds like that's what you're doing as well. Uh-huh.
Yeah. I don't think I'd like the pressure of knowing I'm gonna have to know what's the right step for from my client. No, I absolutely wholeheartedly believe that people do have their own answers and that they know they have that awareness, and it's just my job as a coach is to just help them tap into that.
Right, right. Yeah, I think, and you're giving them a different perspective to consider, which they haven't considered in the past.
And I also kind of can confirm to them that they are, in fact, normal.
Right.
This quarter-life crisis actually really does exist, and it's a normal new phase of development for individuals in their kind of 20s and 30s.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think that's a really important point. I get a lot of clients who come in and we work together one-on-one, I think similar to what you do. And they will often say things like, you must think I'm crazy, or I must sound crazy. And it's funny because when you meet with people every day over and over, you start to notice some real patterns. Like everyone's having the same problems. And I almost wish there was a way we could all get together in a room.
Oh, God.
And talk about
everyone raise your hand.
Right. I think they
around you.
Yeah, I think they would be surprised because you feel very alone, especially when it comes to career, because I think, especially if you're job searching, I encourage my clients to keep their job search kind of a secret here, because in the U.S., especially like in Tennessee, it's, I can't remember the wording, but they can fire you for no reason at any time and kind of walk you out of the building.
Okay.
I think that's different than in Ireland. But so excuse me?
Yeah, it is. It is.
Yeah.
Very different.
So
my background of employment law, my ears are pricking up here.
Right. So here, they can fire you for no cause, and they can fire you and end your employment the same day. And so it's really important for job seekers here to keep their search very, very private, so that they don't jeopardize their current job. And so I think that helps to make people feel very isolated. I mean, it contributes to that issue because you can't really talk about it to very many people. So it's an unfortunate situation. But I believe my understanding is that in Europe there are more protections around employees, so that's not possible.
Yeah, it's within the first 6 months of an employee's contract. There is the possibility that it's called a probationary period, so they could be let go for no reason. But after 13 weeks, they do need to be given a week's notice.
Oh, just a week. Okay, interesting.
Yeah. But generally, kind of the beginning of employment for the six months, they can be let go, and they won't really, the protection doesn't kick in.
Okay.
That makes sense.
That's interesting, yeah. Well, part of the reason that I wanted to speak with you is that I think you probably know I have a little bit of a fascination with Dublin, and I was there a year ago and then came back this year. And my own background is in digital marketing and in technology. So when I was there,
this would be it.
Right.
A great place for you.
Right. Well, I was there and I saw all these offices like, Google, and I know Facebook and Amazon have offices there, and I saw LinkedIn
eBay and Yahoo, and
it's so nuts.
All here.
Yeah. And I mean, really, the size of downtown Dublin is actually very similar in size to downtown Memphis. And so, even in the U.S., we don't have that many tech companies together in such a small area. And so it's really, it was very exciting for me to see it. And the last time I was there, ironically, I took a salsa dancing class. The last year, because I like to do things that where I won't be meeting tourists.
That's a brilliant idea.
Right. And so, but the thing about salsa dancing is that you have to dance with everyone else in the class. They rotate you. And so it's a really good chance to talk to different people. And what I found was that every single person that I danced with was from a different country in Europe. And they were all living in Dublin. They had moved to Dublin for these really interesting new jobs. So I think I danced with someone from Italy and, Germany, and I don't know where. But that really clued me in on it. It sounds like things must be really changing there. And I was kind of curious as to your perception. Have you seen the makeup of who's living and working in Dublin? Is it shifting? Are you seeing clients who are from other areas?
It's a really good question. And there has been a huge shift even in, let's say, gosh, I think it's probably in the last maybe 10 years, probably. Just it's not that long, but the companies, those big companies, the technology companies, they really do. They've attracted an awful lot of kind of workers from all over Europe because the companies are based. They're kind of like, a lot of them have their head office here, but they need individuals with language skills as well. And that's something that in Ireland, in our education, that we've really had to step up because not enough people were studying languages in college. So there was a skills gap.
Okay.
And but it's been fascinating. It has been fascinating to just to see the cultures and how Dublin City even has changed with all of the different cultures. Like we have a part kind of a Chinatown area as well, which is completely new, which you just wouldn't have seen many
that's
years
interesting.
ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's interesting though. A lot of my clients majority would be Irish.
Okay.
But actually, a lot of colleagues, like other coaches that I would kind of associate with in Dublin, they would be Italian and German, and it is. It's very multicultural now.
Yeah. It's interesting to see how quickly it's happened. I mean, when I was in Ireland for this trip, I met with a man named Barry O'Dowd who works with an organization called IDA.
Oh, yes.
And you probably know them. They work to bring, for the listeners, they work to bring new business and new companies into Ireland. And Barry has been working with IDA for, I think, over 25 years on this project.
Yeah.
And
well, he's done a good job.
Right. And I couldn't imagine you working on it for 25 years and all of a sudden it starts to happen. And it's just incredible.
It's interesting. I mean, like Ireland did go through a real boom in the 90s. And there's like so many different reasons for it. But when Europe kind of changed to the euro,
okay,
Ireland was really the only English-speaking country that used the euro that had high levels of young, well-educated workforce, because England, the UK used the pound sterling. So we were kind of a natural, what would be the stepping stone, I suppose, to Europe from between the states. So a lot of, during that period, a lot of large businesses, American multinationals, would have come to Ireland then. But it was just kind of so many different factors. Like, a lot of people were saying, were we lucky, or what was it? But we just kind of have managed to establish ourselves as a, I don't know what the word, as a great little country.
No, for sure.
For technology companies, and but it is fascinating. Just like a lot of my clients would work in PayPal or Google or LinkedIn and things like these. Are all companies that are here now, and just even the kind of the teamwork, the culture of these companies are so different to what the culture would have been in traditional Irish companies.
Right, absolutely.
A lot flatter structures and more employee engagement and employee support, which is fantastic. Like, it's been fascinating to see that evolve and to see the Irish companies learn and develop and kind of, like, what would it just...
Even in the U.S., the companies that you're mentioning, like Google, have created cultures that are very unique, even compared to traditional American companies. And I think, companies, other companies here are also learning from those .coms, different ways to pay attention to their employees' needs. And so I think that's
Thank you, Angela.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That's what I was going to say. I couldn't find the words.
Yeah, no, it's really interesting. I mean, some of those companies have, at least here in the U.S., they offer things like free food or the ability to work from home, or some of them have laundry facilities on campus, or gym facilities. And I've seen most recently in the news that some companies like Facebook, for example, are offering things beyond their normal health care for employees that would not normally be covered, such as fertility treatments. And
wow, that's fantastic.
It's interesting, yeah, because in the U.S., that's not something that you normally find covered by anyone. It's typically out of pocket. So I think those companies are really doing a lot of work to try to see what they could offer in terms of benefits to be more competitive. But speaking of, Europe and the companies there, I actually work with a number of clients who are interested to relocate to Europe from the U.S., and they're Americans typically. And what I have found is that it's pretty tricky as an American to go and to work in Europe. Have you ever worked with this scenario before, and do you have any tips at all?
Not really. When I was working in HR, I would do a lot of work with other European citizens coming to Ireland, and just even within the EU and the visas and things like that. And if you weren't an EU member, because we have kind of free the right to work and travel within EU member states. So even within Europe, if you weren't part of the EU, there would be the issue of visas and things like that, and having to get sponsorship from companies. And the company would have to prove that they weren't able to hire the skills that they needed within Ireland or within the EU member states. So that's why it can be tricky to go for companies to hire beyond Europe, if that makes sense.
That does make sense.
It is possible, and people do it. What I find is the best way for individuals from outside of the EU to come in and secure employment in Ireland is actually through building alliances.
Oh, interesting.
And it's I love that word. But it definitely is this kind of networking, building connections and alliances, and even, I know it sounds odd, Angela, I know it really does sound odd.
No, it's okay.
But using things like LinkedIn and Google to find individuals in a company that you would say, I'd love to work there, and using information to kind of reach out and connect with them, to build a relationship with them, and just kind of say, I found you on LinkedIn, I see what you do, the company that you work for, I find that absolutely fascinating. Would you be free for a Skype, or for can I, like, this is where I want to go, and can I bounce some ideas off you via email and stuff like that? The worst thing that can happen is people say no. The best thing is that you do build up that relationship there, and you kind of get I suppose, a mentor or an insider information, I suppose.
No, I totally agree. I met a number of people actually who work in Dublin at these companies like LinkedIn and Google. I actually connected with them over LinkedIn, and I just found them. I searched for people who worked, at Google, who live in Dublin, and, I would look through and look for someone whose profile seemed interesting to me, and then I would send them a request. And, I made a lot of connections that way. People were relatively open.
That is one of the best ways, because especially if you're a job seeker and you have an interest in kind of in the future to come to Ireland, that what you're doing is you're establishing these relationships, and you have eyes and ears within the country, within the company, that are looking out for you.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
It's and a lot of the time when I say that to people, they're kind of looking at me, you want me to like reach out and connect with someone that I've never met before. I don't know if, but even within Ireland, clients that I would have who would come for career coaching, that is like, I would never recommend for them to sit at home and go through the job sites and send their CV.
Absolutely.
Like, if you want to be waiting for a long time, well, then absolutely that would be the way to go. But you need to kind of get out there and meet people and tell them, this is what I'm good at, this is what I'm passionate about, and I love what you do, and tell me more about that, and how did you get into that? And people love that, they respond to that. And I've just found that, like, so many of my clients who have gotten the jobs that they just have dreamed of, that is how they have done it. It's not because it's just by chance appeared on Monster.com and they sent in their CV and got chosen from the other 30,000 people that applied from it. They actually went above and beyond and kind of just put themselves out there and kind of just created the opportunity, if that makes sense.
No, it does. I think that Monster.com scenario is pretty unusual. And I think you make a really good point. I've had that happen once, and that was for my very first job out of college. I applied on Monster and got a job at FedEx, a corporate job, but that's never really happened again. It comes down to networking and getting to know people, and interestingly enough, just last week I started working with a client who is based in Italy, and we're meeting via Skype, and he's struggled to find jobs there locally in Venice where he lives. And so one of the things I actually suggested that he do is to start to look at what's happening in Dublin, because he's very interested in technology and internet businesses, but he wasn't aware that there were so many in Dublin. And so it seems like that would be a great opportunity for someone like that to take advantage of that EU status, to look at those positions.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I noticed on your website that you have a number of testimonials, and I was wondering if you could share with us like an example of someone, no specifics or anything, but someone that, you were able to kind of help them turn things around after they were working with you.
Let's see. It'd be sound cocky here. There's so many to choose from. I suppose, like, one, it was a client I actually saw yesterday, and absolutely lovely, lovely girl, but was working within a company where she just felt like she had to hide, if that makes sense, that she just couldn't be herself.
Okay.
And I found it a really, really interesting client to work with, because she knew herself that she was very ambitious, that she was very confident, but that there was something within her career that just wasn't. It was kind of sucking this kind of ambition and confidence out of her, and she kept saying, "I just want to get back to me, to kind of to be myself again." And I find those what are they? Challenges really, really interesting, because I love Brene Brown. Have you come across Brene Brown?
I'm not sure.
She's I think American, actually, a researcher, and she's researched kind of authenticity.
Okay.
Just being your really authentic self. And it's something that has come up an awful lot with different clients that I've worked with, because remember I mentioned earlier that a lot of the time we adapt to other people's expectations. And this job that this individual had gotten, it was a fantastic job. It was in a very high-profile industry within Ireland that would be very, very well known, and kind of great status to be able to kind of say, I work for this company, and huge perks and all this kind of stuff. So when she started working there, she morphed her behaviour completely into whatever they wanted her to be. And after a period of time, she lost herself completely.
Oh, wow.
And she just began to get quite resentful because of the expectations that would be on her. Do you know what I mean? To do these very menial jobs, because that's what she had set up from the beginning. She had never been assertive. She'd never created boundaries, and this was just chipping away at her confidence and her self-esteem. But even within that company, she saw other areas that she aspired to go into, but just didn't have the confidence to go there. So we worked together for a while, and it was a lot of the values exercise. That kind of clarity session was fantastic, because she was able to see very, very clearly and gain that awareness, okay, this is why. And she hadn't understood, she hadn't, I suppose, joined the dots of, this is why I behave this way, and this is why I did it. And it got me to where I am because I've gotten this experience and I've done this course and I have this, which is great, because now I'm in a position to be able to move on. So it was exactly what I was talking about in terms of just building up the confidence slowly, working with her emotional intelligence, kind of her own self-respect, self-regard, awareness of how she's feeling, starting to work on the assertiveness, but also to really identify where she wanted to go within that company, and to start to network with the team members that are in that department. And she really has come back to herself. But she, this week, I met her yesterday, and it was the end of her first week in this new role.
Oh, that's exciting.
She's managed to kind of maneuver herself just over the Christmas period that a situation came up. And because she had kind of built her confidence and had gone out and networked with the director of that department and with the other team members of that department, and kind of just has told them over the last 2 to 3 months, I really am fascinated by your department and by what you do. And as I said, it would be very different because she, from what you were talking about in Tennessee, where you have to be quite quiet about your job search.
That's true.
And here it's quite different, and because it's all within the one company, it's quite approved. Like her director would be the same, but they knew then that she, one, had the skills for it, and two, really had the desire for it. So as soon as an opportunity came up, they were like, we want this girl.
Oh, wow.
We want her on our team. And she's like, hell yes, I want to be there. And it was fantastic just to kind of, we didn't meet for a session yesterday, it was just a catch-up of kind of, like, I'm there, I did it, and it's fantastic. And she knows now to kind of, from the beginning, from day one, that, like, she's leaving at 5 o'clock. She is putting those boundaries in place, that she's being herself, and she's asking for what she needs, and she knows what her values are. And it's fantastic that, like, even in meetings, when her new boss kind of has a meeting every morning with the team, and when they came together first, it's like, well, what do you need? Like, that she kind of put it out there that we need to get to know each other. What's most important in terms of kind of what are we all trying to get from our roles? And I need to feel respected and listened to.
Oh, wow.
And she's, like, had the confidence to be able to say that. And how, I don't know. So I'm on a buzz still.
Oh, that's great.
From hearing her, kind of just so happy from the difference. But it's those things. It's building, kind of having that awareness of what's going on, being able to kind of let it go, forgive yourself. This is what happens. It's okay. And baby steps, really take baby steps to build up the confidence. and find something that you'd love to do and somebody who's doing it, and go and talk to them. Let it be known that that's something that you want to do, that you aspire to, and just really put yourself out there and focus on what you want. That was one of the major things, because she would come home and she would just have a rant about all of the things that went wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know that way? So it was just the focus was in the wrong place. Her energy was low. So just all of those small steps gradually changed to bring her to where she wanted to be. So that's
that's a great story.
Anyway, from yesterday.
Yeah, no, it's a great story. I think it really shows that if you're willing to work and face some of your fears, that you really can, find the answers. Well, this has been great. And, for the people who are listening who are interested to learn more about you, where you have a website, is that right?
I do, yeah. It is myquarterlifecoach.com.
Okay, and you're on Twitter as well, right?
I am. Now, I actually haven't got my head around Twitter that much,
okay.
to be honest with you. I really need this. One of my New Year's resolutions is to kind of bring myself up to speed with the different social media. Facebook is probably the best place to get me.
Okay.
And it's my Quarter Life Coach on Facebook as well.
Okay.
Yeah, I do need to get onto Twitter.
No,
I haven't linked up with my Facebook page, and I don't know what posts there, to be honest. So
yeah, no, okay. So we'll direct folks to go to myquarterlifecoach.com. And Paula, thank you so much for joining me. This has been very helpful.
Yeah, no, it's been an absolute pleasure, and the time has absolutely flown.
Well, yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you everyone for listening. Tune in next week for another edition of the Copeland Coaching Podcast. And if you've enjoyed the program today, please be sure to subscribe on iTunes or Stitcher to be sure that you never miss an episode.
Thank you for listening to the Copeland Coaching Podcast today with your host, Angela Copeland. Tune in next time to get more great tips on turning your job search into a slam dunk.